You remember great stories. You remember the triumph or the tragedy. You remember where you were, how you were, and who you were with. You remember how great it felt when you did it and how crestfallen you were when it all fell apart. You remember the nuance of it. Great stories stick with us, etchings of time filling the corridors of a moment. But in life, we don't get to choose what stays and what fades. I don't even remember who I sat next to at my college graduation. I have so many moments, so many things left unremembered. But I do remember Christmas 1995. It was the first day I played Chrono Trigger. Just as a disclaimer, I'm going to refer to Chrono as Chrono, Marl as Marl, and Chrono Trigger as Chrono Trigger. I know this isn't what everyone always saw when they read it all those years ago, but I did, and I literally can't change it now. Chrono Trigger had been released earlier that year to critical acclaim. It was known as the Dream Project, created by the Dream Team, featuring all the various other talents that had previously yielded impressive results for publisher Square of Final Fantasy fame. Calling it a dream project is pretty accurate. It eliminates any false modesty that simply has no place here. We don't need it. Chrono Trigger may be the greatest video game ever made. It's not a coincidence you see it labeled time in and time out on various clickbait listing the top 20, top 50, top whatever games ever. And for my sake, trust me, there's a serious danger that comes with running a YouTube game channel, particularly one that has as few updates as we do, by stating a blanket platitude that Chrono Trigger is one of the greatest games ever. But it is. It really is. Like most early Final Fantasies, Chrono Trigger is about saving the world. What immediately stands out about Chrono Trigger is that Chrono Trigger doesn't start out in a world of turmoil. At least not any that's noticeable. There's a 400-year build of racial tension between humans and mystics, but that's not immediately revealed to us as yet. Chrono is a young man, awoken by his mother, and reminded to get dressed and make his way to the 1,000-year celebration that's happening at the square. This isn't a dungeon to escape or we die, that comes later. It's a fair, and we woke up late for it. That's it. It's important to remember that Chrono didn't ask for any of this. He didn't ask to bump into a princess, he didn't ask to be pulled through time, and he had no idea he would be tasked with saving the planet. He just wanted to be a kid at a fair. That's important, and the game begs the question, is this simply a matter of coincidence, or is it fate? I'm certainly not suggesting that this was the first video game protagonist to accidentally become a hero. Not even the first to accidentally become a time traveler. But what sets Chrono Trigger apart is just how naturally everything unfolds. The moment-to-moment storytelling that so effortlessly rolls out is not something that's easy to pull off. It's never forced, it's earned, and it doesn't have to use a cover of Stand By Me to convince you.
When the night has come.
Concepts like coincidence and fate, life and death, evolution versus creation, natural selection, love, race, faith, hate were heavy topics for an 8-year-old that turned on this game so many years ago. But they were important. It was that exposure to these conceptions that helped shape me into the person I am today. Yes, video games are capable of that. If you didn't believe that, you probably wouldn't be here. What's remarkable about Chrono Trigger is that it never attempts to simply define its concepts. It does, however, seek to provide context for them as realistically as possible. It's not interested in delivering a one-sided argument above all, well, not completely. To the contrary, it embraces the notion that no matter what these individuals bring to the table, whether they were sworn enemies of old or just a kid who wanted to visit Beckler's sideshow at the fair, they all unite to preserve each other's future, to preserve each other's life. "600 AD is the first place we visit on our journey. 400 years before present day. The countryside is one ravaged by war between the mystics and the humans, which seems to amount to a race war amongst all else. The human queen has been abducted, and as our new friend Marl is a dead ringer for the queen, the humans assume that the abducted queen has been returned, thus they give up their search. However, as Princess Nadia or Marl is a descendant of the queen, if the queen dies, she cannot exist, and the queen will die if she's not rescued by Chrono and his best friend Luca. In fact, because the search for the queen is called off because of the appearance of the look-alike ancestor, fate seems to have hedged its bets and removes Marl from existence. The game illustrates the rules for time travel in an extremely nifty way. The relatively small plot thread compared to the rest of the game would be enough to fit an entire game's narrative into if the game sought that, but this is merely an appetizer sprinkled with foreshadowing. The queen is not dead yet because we can still rescue her, yet she is more likely to die, thus Marl disappears. But if the queen's still technically alive, shouldn't Marl also still technically exist? This isn't a mistake in the game's story, these are exactly the things it wants you to ponder. Mainly, what is the model? How does time work? How does free will exist if our lives are predetermined? And if I can travel into the future, doesn't the very acknowledgement of a future mean that everything is already determined? There seem to be two ideas of time travel that Chrono Trigger wants to consider. The path of coincidence, that merely the appearance of Chrono and Luca cause a disruption in the space-time continuum, and they must change the past again in order to pull Marl back into existence. Or our other model is one that would place Chrono Trigger's timeline on a linear plane with each moment in time being a binary set of linear equations, with something or some entity manipulating time based on the odds of each equation's outcome. This would be something more akin to fate than mere chance. The game places time on two different sides of a fulcrum. The fulcrum is the apocalypse, the only 100% certainty it seems. A post-apocalyptic scenario is the second time zone we jump into, 2300 AD. It is here where our characters learn of Lavos, the ender of the world, set to destroy the planet in 1999. Thus, our true quest is finally revealed. Kill Lavos, save the planet. But the game avoids making these goals simplistic. One can't simply just destroy Lavos. You have to know what it is, who it is, where did it come from, who created it, or is it the creator, and why? The why is important. The why should always be important. The characters are constantly asking themselves that, but in an effort to avoid conventionalism, the story doesn't allow this villain to overshadow other important points it tries to make about humanity. Small but equally important touches, like the concept of money. Why do we have it? What's its use outside of civilization? Barter system versus monetary system versus no system. No system's practical applications exist in the future, a place where there is no civilization, and yet a place where our technology is so advanced, we have machines that can give you a full night's rest in mere seconds. But we still can't feed the hungry. As we travel through time, the entire crew is filled with some of the most colorful party members in RPG history. They're not just marvelous because of their abilities, but also because of their complexities. Robo, if you'd forgive me, feels conventional at first. He's a robot living amongst humans, and he's pondering his actual soul or humanity. Does such a thing exist for Robo? And then Robo's brethren seek to destroy all their creators or humans. It's all very Skynet. But consider Robo's position. To stay loyal to his friends, to destroy Lavos because of that shared humanity, in an effort to secure a future where someone like him, a robot created by humans, may not even be created. Frog was formerly Glenn, a man that with his best friend Cyrus challenged Magus in the war against the Mystics. It made Magus an easy villain. Other than maybe starting a war, our heroes believe Magus created Lavos, and we find out that Frog was turned into his present form after Magus murdered Cyrus and cursed him. This scene is simply incredible. Frog seeks to fill the shoes of his fallen friend and avenge his death by killing Magus, yet the game pulls off an incredible plot twist by using the audience's knowledge of conventional plot structure against them. Why wouldn't we, too, as the observer, not want Magus dead? And yet the game is more complicated still. Magus used the Mystics. He never created Lavos. He summoned Lavos to destroy him. Your goals are aligned, and his reasons are not so black and white. Nothing in this game ever truly is. We get the chance to observe Magus as a child in the year 12,000 BC, the era of magic, an incredible way of filling in the blanks on where he got his power. We get to see this village in the sky floating on the ideas of their superiority, their enlightenedness, and magic. It's no wonder why Magus behaves the way he does. They all do from here. Well, mostly, but his reasons run deeper. It's a troubled childhood that shapes him. His desire to save his sister's life and the hate he has for his mother who used his sister's power to siphon strength from Lavos. Her hubris leads to the destruction of her people, all for the price of everlasting life, which would essentially render time and the story's theming meaningless. She's literally anti-plot. Whether Glenn ever gets his vengeance against Magus is up to the player, or even the concept of vengeance. The player has to ask themselves, does Magus deserve to die for the destruction he wrought in the Middle Ages? Can there be some way to avenge Cyrus besides more murder? And the game offers more than one way to do this. Both are equally tragic, equally beautiful. Ayla, Marl's most distant relative, engages in war against the Reptides, another struggle of two different peoples, and again, one human and one not. It's a feedback loop which provides effective perspective. And when victory is achieved for humanity, again, the story takes a moment not to celebrate the victory of us, of humans, but rather mourn what we have lost. A whole civilization of people? And the ponderings of why would God, or this entity, would favor one people over another. What kind of creator does that? Why? We ask ourselves that question a lot, don't we? Not in the game, I mean in our own lives. How many people do you know spend their lives asking that, looking up, asking why, and never being satisfied is part of the human condition? We contain the knowledge to know we are alive, the knowledge of knowing we spend our lives affecting other people's lives, both positively and negatively, and the knowledge that we're all going to die someday. But we never know why. That's the one I we never dot in our minds. Ayla is from a simple era, and everything is meant to be very, very primitive. Where they live, how they speak. But that doesn't make her any less human. Humanity is the constant here. It's human to feel insignificant. The ones I have not highlighted are Marl and Luca. They serve as our guides to the present and serve mostly as the main party for the early game. Marl is actually Princess Nadia, who resents the life of royal propriety. She wants to live her own life and denounces her father as unloving and ultimately finds herself linked to the crown's redemption arc, aside from falling in love with Chrono. Luca represents the more rustic side of Guardia, Chrono's best friend and aspiring inventor who accidentally created the portal that sent the group through time. All is not what it seems with her either. You see, to destroy Lavos is grandiose. On a personal level though, it doesn't change Luca's circumstances. 1000 AD is a time of relative peace, you'll remember. The regret of her work, her inventions, and the one that robbed her mother's use of her legs. Luca's mother looks on, resentful, unable to move from her chair, wondering if Luca even bothers to consider her while she wastes the day away. But isn't Luca simply using the work as a way to cope? To avoid facing her present reality? Her constant guilt? Luca considers the end of Lavos as a victory for humanity, we all do, and yet, why can't we go back in time and save her mom? Why not undo all those years of regret? But is it not wrong to use time travel for selfish reasons? The game will leave that in your hands. And then there's Chrono. Chrono is the game's nearly titular character, and one of the most profound uses of a silent protagonist in gaming. There's so much personality for a character that never talks, truly. From his strength, his humor, his bravery, there's so much nuance here that you never actually feel like Chrono is silent. He has opinions, and they often shape the teams. When he charges at Lavos in one last effort to save his friends, you know him, and you know him well. And when he simply fades away, it's important. And you feel the weight when he's gone. You miss him. But can you bring him back? Again, is such a thing even right? Chrono Trigger is astonishing in how it took Square's incredible penchant for melodrama but avoided archetypes that often haunt the subgenre, like the thief or the damsel. It simply tells an incredible story that every time I play it, I find something else new that I absolutely adore about it. As I've gotten older, I've learned that this game shaped the way I viewed not only the medium and not only art, but also my worldview. Living and dying and legacy were all things that were rightly heavy to me at a young age. I was probably years away from truly having an opinion on God or fate or coincidence. But this leveled me up rather quickly. I keep thinking about Chrono's trip to the fair that day to see Luca's new invention. His mother waking him up from sleeping in, his late arrival, him stopping to see Melchior, all those little nuances before running into Marl. At that moment, had he spent an extra second in bed or lingered too long in the village, this encounter would never have happened. Their collision, and the events that this kicks off changes the course of history. In fact, as far as the story is concerned, it was the most significant event in the history of space and time. I think of my own life, so long now post Chrono Trigger's release. I think of all my moments like Chrono and Marl's run-in. Some things in my own life would have turned out differently had the slightest thing been altered. And here I sit, 22 years later, still asking myself the same questions about fate and chance, about God, about time. Do I have these answers? No, I don't. And I suppose I never will. But it's been one hell of a journey.